Now today we are going to be talking you through our range of 30 different seed mixtures which are designed for any and every kind of garden. Starting with our conservation seed mixtures. These are mixtures of native, mostly perennial seeds, and they're designed for people looking for preservation or restoration of our native flower meadows. We're looking at mixtures designed for different soil types, for sandy soil, for chalk and limestone, for clay soil, etc. And also in this range we include native grasses, fine slender grass types that can be sown alongside the native wildflowers. Everything we have here is in a 7 square metre pack. So each of these mixtures is designed, it's pure seed, ready mixed with an organic husk. But you will also find both smaller and larger pack sizes across the range on the website. Now, of our 30 different mixtures, we have 4 which are annual only species. And these meadows are designed to give real impact, real intensity. They're great for cut flower displays inside the house as well. But essentially the flowering cycle will complete in 1 year. Our passion mixture is one of the most spectacular of our meadows. It's 30 different species, absolutely packed with a profusion of colour. But not everybody wants that very colourful, exuberant meadow, and we have mixtures designed for every situation. The Summer Pastels meadow, which is a new one for this season, focuses on a softer colour palette, sometimes called a strawberries and cream mix, lots of pinks and whites and creams with little blue accents coming through the meadow. Even more subdued is our new Coastal Blue meadow. So here we are really looking at a very limited colour palette with blues and whites and little lime accents. All of those 3 meadows are relatively tall, growing at around 70 to 80 centimetres in height. But if in your garden you wanted something a little shorter, our Carnival mixture, which again is a multicoloured mixture, 22 annual species, will only grow on average to about 50 centimetres in height. So now we're going to talk to you about some of our annual and perennial seed mixtures. And one of the best places to start is with this all-rounder. We call it every kind of soil. It really is very good in a range of soil types. It'll cope with clay, it'll cope with dry soils, even slightly damp soils it will do pretty well. And you can sow this mixture not only in the spring, between March and June, but it's a good September or October sower. Some of the mixtures really should only be sown in the spring. The annual content is not quite hardy enough for an autumn sowing. There are 3 products, Bee Heaven, Butterfly Heaven, Ladybird Heaven. These are all just fantastic to attract pollinators into the garden. Really colourful, all quite tall. They will grow 70 to 80 centimetres in height, and they should be sown between March and June. If you're thinking about a collection of different meadows in the garden, these 3 would work really well together. They have a distinctive character, but they work really well as a grouping. When we say we have a special bee mixture, remember please that all of our mixtures are recommended. They are RHS plants for pollinator mixture, so everything we do is good for pollinators. The bee mixture is really ticking every box in terms of a food source for visiting bees, not just honeybees, but bumblebees and solitaries. So we've got Butterfly and Ladybird Heaven as well, as I mentioned. Within that little collection of biodiversity seed mixtures, we have the most wonderful aphid control mixture. This is designed particularly for use on allotments in your vegetable garden. Is absolutely packed with both annual and perennial species, will attract aphids into the garden, but then will attract the predators, the lacewings, the hoverflies, ladybirds, etc., that are going to control your aphid population without the use of chemicals in the garden. We've added one for this season, very similar actually to the previous mixtures, but this one is slightly taller. It'll grow up to 1 metre in height, 80 to 100 centimetres on average. And this one we call Aromatic Garden. So it's full of scented species, culinary and medicinal species to fill your garden with scent as well as colour. We get asked a lot in people's gardens, if you haven't got a sizable garden, you might want to be thinking about something which is a little more contained. And these following mixtures are all relatively short. We're going down from 70, 80 centimetres down to 60 or even slightly below. And this bee border mixture, which is a new one for this season, again has this really strong focus on a food source for bees, but slightly lower in height. One of our old favourites, this is slightly shorter still. Sensation mix will grow up to about 50 centimetres in height. Really colourful, multicoloured mixture. Copes well with sun again or semi-shade. Will cope with a wide range of soil types: clay, dry, loam. Another short all-rounder, this is a mixture we call tapestry. And this is another one which is useful to sow either in the spring or in the autumn. Prefers a sunny garden, and it'll give you, as all of these mixtures do, the longest flowering succession. When we're sowing in the spring, we will see the first signs of flower 6 or so weeks after sowing, and then this wonderful succession week after week into the autumn. This following mixture, part of our sort of short collection. We call it extra short because it is indeed. It only grows about 8 inches in height, 20 centimetres, and it gives you this beautiful flowering carpet in all sorts of difficult soil types. It'll cope well with dry, impoverished, sandy soils. Will also do quite well in a richer soil. Short and sweet. It's a dwarf ground cover mixture again, and this can also be used not only as a meadow in its own right, but if you're looking to fill the spaces in your herbaceous border, perhaps between rose bushes and shrubs, you may want something which will give you this lovely naturalistic country look, and it'll fill the spaces that would otherwise be filled with weeds. Cracks and crevices. There may be spaces in your garden that you hadn't thought of, you know, those little unloved patches where you can just sprinkle seeds, and cracks and crevices is really a marvellous little mixture for, it doesn't really need very much soil at all, it'll fill those spaces. We then have what we're calling under the wall. It's very similar to the cracks and crevices mixture. It will very happily sit alongside the spontaneous vegetation, the weeds that you might have otherwise removed. This will fill, and it gives a really natural look in the garden, particularly at the foot of fences and walls. And we then come on to yet another dwarf mixture, tree foot, and it's great in sowing underneath trees in those shady, sort of dappled shade areas where there may well be an impoverished soil, a sort of rooty, dry, stony soil type. And here we're looking at a 40 centimetre average height and a ground cover of these lovely annual and perennial flowers. We then move on to shaded area. So where the tree foot mixture is great in a dappled shade area, shaded area, as the name suggests, is really for areas of dappled to heavier shade. It's a tall mixture. We often refer to it as a woodland edge mix. And the last couple of mixtures, which again are new for this year, green roofs, is actually a mixture that can be used in many situations where you have a fairly shallow soil bed, where you've probably got limited fertility. So this is a good ground cover mixture in general, but for green roofs is absolutely fantastic, really drought tolerant as well. And the last mixture is water's edge. Again, a mixture that will cope with damp soils, damp and slightly wet soils, and those soils which may be damp at certain times of the year but dry out. So it's coping with quite a difficult soil type, and fantastic if you're putting a pond, or you have an existing pond in the garden, to sow along the edges of your pond. So that was really just a brief introduction, an overview to our range. Please bear in mind there are additional mixtures you'll find on the website. We're always adding new mixtures. Just a reminder, with our conservation seed mixtures, they can all be sown into a scarified grass, whereas all of the mixtures here need to be sown into bare soil, into a prepared soil, a fine cultivated tilth of soil. Do also please remember that we, to help you, have produced a series of how-to videos which you can see on the website, and we are here to help you with any questions that you might have.